Hello everyone, my name is Gimmie Gamma. I'm here with a simple goal to help you in the world of color and Davinci Resolve. In this episode, we're going to go over the basic settings of a project and getting started with Davinci Resolve. Davinci can be a pretty daunting program for those unfamiliar and may be a bit overwhelming for the first time you open it, but with a little bit of time and a little bit of practice, it will become your best friend, I promise you. When opening Davinci, you are greeted with a Project Manager window, where you can name and open existing projects. So let's click on a new project, and for the sake of this video, I'm going to name my project Tutorial 1 Getting Started. Alright, now we are here in Davinci and ready to get started. Before I start working on anything, I like to go down here to the very bottom right and click on this cog icon to bring up the project settings. There's a lot of things in here, but for the sake of our project and keeping it simple, I'm only going to show you the basic settings to work with for now. As time goes on and you get more comfortable, we can get into the other things. Before I start any project, I like to know what my final output resolution and frame rate is going to be, as well as my intended delivery platform, be it YouTube, television, or theater. In this settings window, we can set up everything now so that when you're ready to render, you'll be all set for delivery and you won't have to change anything else. Starting at the top, we have Master Settings. In this window, we can change settings for our timeline, video monitoring, optimized media and render cache, working folders, and finally, frame interpolation. In the top settings box for our timeline resolution, we want to set it up the same as what our final delivery will be. We know the client is going to want 4K at 23.976 frames per second, so that's what we're going to set. Now our video monitoring, we're going to want to set this to the same as the timeline settings at the same frame rate because I want to see exactly what I'm working with. If your computer is a bit slower or not as powerful, you can always change these settings to something less demanding, like 1080p or even 720p. This way, your computer can keep up with your workflow. Optimized media and render cache. This box, I feel, needs a bit of explanation. Optimized media is media that's optimized for performance on your machine. If you're working with a codec that's demanding or too large, you can choose to make optimized media as a proxy for your workflow. Render cache is a cache folder in your system where any rendered media will live. If you want to view your timeline with smooth playback, you can choose to render out a portion or the entirety of your project and then play it back smoothly. In this box, we can choose the codec we want to use for both optimized media as well as the render cache. One thing I want to note is that the higher quality you choose for your render cache, the more space you're going to need in the render cache folder. They kind of go hand in hand. These files over time can take up a lot of space, so if your computer is limited, it would be a good idea to choose a codec that's smaller in file size or empty the cache folder pretty frequently. I'll show you how to empty the render cache folders a little later in the video. Next, we have working folders. This is the location where your generated stills and render cache I previously mentioned are going to live. Feel free to change these to wherever you want if you have a preference. Frame interpolation is the last box in this window. Frame interpolation is how Davinci will generate frames using mixed frame rates or if there are any missing frames due to retiming, etc. You can leave these settings alone or you can play around with some and test out what works best for you. The next section of interest is the color management section. In here you'll find how Davinci processes colors in your project. By default I have Davinci YRGB selected with a timeline color space of Rec 709 with a gamma of 2.4. In this drop-down box you'll see a lot of different options and it can be a bit overwhelming, but for our purposes we're only going to focus on two settings. Those two settings are Rec 709 2.2 and 2.4. Rec 709 is sort of the standard color space used in most media. Think of it as television and streaming. The gamma settings of 2.2 and 2.4 can be changed based on where your final product will be viewed. 2.2 is reserved generally for brighter scenarios. Think home, at the office, if you're with the buddies at the pub, or social settings. 2.4 is reserved for darker viewing scenarios such as a theater. If your final product is set to be released in a theater, then 2.4 is for you. Since my video is going to be on YouTube and most people view YouTube everywhere except for a theater, I'm going to go ahead and choose 2.2. Dolby Vision is an amazing feature used for working with HDR or high dynamic range video. HDR and Dolby Vision is an extensive topic, so for now we're going to leave these settings unchecked. LUTs, or lookup tables, are used as a reference for what the final image will be. Directors like to use LUTs on set while filming so they can get a better idea of what the end product will look like. LUTs are a generic set of parameters applied to an image for reference and in good practice shouldn't be used in the final output. These settings we'll leave alone. Broadcast Safe was put into place so that the images you're displaying are not too bright, not too dark for the television or the computer monitor to display. These settings are strictly adhered to when broadcast is your final delivery. These settings you can adjust so that nothing you're working on will be allowed to be darker or lighter than you specify. Generate soft clip LUT and analyze pattern again deal with LUTs, so we're going to skip those for now. Moving down to camera raw. If you know what kind of camera was used on set for filming, these will allow you to tell Davinci how to process the images you're giving it. You will see here we have quite a few cameras to choose from. If at any time you get any info about what camera was used, the better. That about does it for this section in the project settings and for our purposes. There's still a bunch of settings in here I didn't discuss, but for now the ones I mentioned should suffice. Feel free to read up on the other settings if you want. A couple other settings I would like to talk about are in Davinci Preferences. The first is under General. We have a nice setting called Use Mac Display Profile for Viewers. I like to leave this checked because my monitor has been calibrated, and I have a profile for those settings. This ensures that what you are seeing in the viewers is using the calibration. It's important to note that if you're working on a Windows machine, this checkbox does not exist. Sorry about that. The memory and GPU settings are nice to have if you know the limitations of your computer. Here you can dictate how much or little your computer can use as far as resources. We have memory and Fusion cache with handy little sliders. GPU configuration is nice if you're working with an external or an eGPU, and you would like Resolve to use it for the current GPU processing as opposed to the one that's inside your machine. Media storage, again, is nice because you can decide, well, where your files live, so that's pretty straightforward. Decode options allow you to decide how Davinci will decode the footage you're working with. Using the GPU for performance boosts, using certain types of footage such as BRAW or Blackmagic RAW, RED or .mp4 or a variant of .mp4 such as H.264 or 5. The rest of these settings for video and audio I/O, audio plugins, control panels, general, internet accounts, and advanced, feel free to mess around with those and change to your liking because most of those settings in there are for preference. Now, I mentioned before about deleting your render cache so you don't run out of space in your machine. This is very important. That's the only reason why I bring this up. Too many times I've seen people run out of space and they say, my hard drive is full, how do I clear it up? Well, it's probably full because you've never emptied your render cache. So if you navigate up here to the top toolbar and select Playback, delete render cache, all. This is going to significantly reduce storage consumed, so be sure to empty it often, especially if you don't need smooth playback any longer. Well, folks, that wraps up today's video, and I hope that I was able to teach you something. If you have any questions, feel free to ask down in the comments section so I can see them, and I'll try to answer as many as possible. Giving this video a like is always appreciated, and consider subscribing. It helps me out a lot. And until the next video, have a great day.